Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast, where we talk about building wealth, gaining time and financial freedom through different opportunities in real estate. And what I really love about the podcast is highlighting different stories, different people doing different things. We talk a lot about larger scale syndicators that have thousands and thousands of units. And then we interview people that talk about goal setting and taking a holistic approach to goals. And so I love the diversity of topics that we cover and highlighting different people in different areas. And today is really cool because we're going to talk about what it's like investing in Belize. And we haven't talked a lot about international opportunities. And so today we've got David Kafka here, and David is from South Carolina and has worked his way down to Belize and has started Caribbean Capital Group and is helping generate interest and obviously investment money investing in Belize. And we'll talk about why Belize might be a good opportunity to invest in. That's the cool part of this podcast is we get a chance to highlight these cool stories, people doing different things, and really hopefully open up your mind to different ideas, following your passion, and also understanding that it's not location specific. You can go somewhere and do something different and have a unique niche. So prior to coming down to Belize, David was the founder and manager of Super Green Inc., a successful landscaping company in Charleston, South Carolina, and spent 12 years serving his community as a firefighter and engineer for the Mount Pleasant, South Carolina Fire Department. Moved down to Belize and is the broker owner for a Remax franchise there. And now you've been down there for 10 years and doing some really cool things. So we'll dig into that. So David, so excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me, buddy.
Why don't you just talk a little bit in your own words here of how your story came to be, getting into real estate and then getting down to Belize, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I started out, like you said, as a fireman, and a fireman always has to work a second job. And so I started landscaping on the side, and it came to the point where I had to make a decision. And I just kind of got tired of the politics. I loved the job. So I wanted to just kind of have a little more freedom of time. And so I ended up making a tough decision of retiring from the fire service and did the landscaping full time, and it took off. But then I had some issues with, I bought a property where I had my company, and they shut me down for no landscaping and no handicap parking, and nobody around me had it. So I was kind of tired of big business, that or big government that kind of controls everything. And we were talking one day, and I said, man, I'm going to go look outside of the US and see, where I can go. And I stumbled on a little country called Belize. And honestly, I picked Belize because it was English speaking, because I'm too dumb to learn Spanish. And so that was in probably 2004, 2005. And then I moved to Belize in 2010. So next week is my 13-year anniversary. And I'm a Belize citizen. I'm still a US citizen. And it's just been a great ride. I love it. The people are awesome. You fall in love with the people, the food, the culture. It's kind of like manana, right? Slowing down, but it's English speaking. And so all my contracts are in English. Everything's in English. So you don't have to struggle about reading menus, things like that. The negative is, I sold everything in 2008, and we know what happened in 2008. So I got pennies on the dollar, but I knew I was going to step into real estate. And I just wanted to help people because I saw Belize has no regulations for real estate. And I saw a lot of crooks making money and taking advantage of people. So I thought, hey, if somebody with ethics can do it or, can help, I'm sure I can make a living doing it, and so that's kind of what led me down the real estate path.
Highlights first, you mentioned English speaking. What are some other things that people who don't know much about Belize, what do they need to know about the country?
Yeah, so it's probably about the size of Connecticut. Mm-hmm. Very small country. We have 425,000 people. We're on the Caribbean Sea. The very first t-shirt I ever bought in Belize was "Where the hell is Belize?" And nobody knew anything about Belize. Now they don't even sell that shirt no more. But it's in the Caribbean, just around Mexico and Guatemala. And we're in part of Central America. We're part of the British Commonwealth. So the laws are very much like North America, Canada, and the US. It's full title ownership, English speaking, contracts are in English. So if you bought something in Mexico, which I'm not knocking it, it's just all the contracts are in Spanish, but it has an English translation. But if something goes to court, they're going to fall back on the Spanish translation because that's the original language. So we call Belize international investing on training wheels because it's so much like investing in the US or North America, if you will. But it is outside of, the US. But it's a 2-hour flight from Dallas. You guys are in Minnesota. We have direct flights for most of the year, straight from there. California, Seattle, just there's so many different flights. We've tripled in flights over the last 10 years, and airfare coming to Belize.
Yeah. Interesting that you talk about just the English piece with the contracts, because, as an agent, there's discrepancy on contracts with English speakers as their primary language, right? You write something in there and you're not very clear in how you put that together. And so that's something that, every now and then you have the broker tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, let's write this way instead, because you can make it more clear. Well, yeah, obviously, if you're going back and forth between two different languages, there's a big difference there. And so we've got contract disputes in English. And so, yeah, even doing that in a different language creates some challenges. So that makes a lot of sense. So you now are working on helping investors pair up their money with properties in Belize and opportunities in Belize. And so when did you really start doing that piece of the puzzle? Was that right out of the gate, or did you wait a little while before you started talking about the investment side?
Yeah, I really, I bought property. I knew what equity was in the States, but I really didn't know what it was, right? I guess I was lucky because I never lost money, except when I sold my final house in the States in 2008, that went in foreclosure. But all my investment properties, my commercial property, all that we made money on, just because of the timing, the location, and all that. It wasn't in, so when I moved to Belize, I started out as an assistant. Then I moved up to an agent after a year. And within a couple of years, I was one of the top, I guess, 25 agents in the Caribbean, and had the opportunity to buy my franchise. So when I bought the franchise, I went to the R4 convention in Vegas and met my mentors, and, started listening to their podcast, and then heard this guy called Robert Kiyosaki, who I never really knew who he was. And, like so many others, read that purple book. But it wasn't Rich Dad, Poor Dad that changed my life. It was more of Cash Flow Quadrant. And I saw that I was always an S. I was an E in the fire department, always an S as self-employed, but I was never a business owner. And I wanted to be a business owner. I like having freedom of time, and joined their mentoring club. And I thought it was going to be super easy because I had over 10,000 people on my list, but I had the wrong people on my list. Everybody on my list are active buyers. They're, they want to buy property in Belize. They want to retire in Belize. They're not, investors, if you will. I mean, they're investors, but I don't know if you understand what you know what I'm trying to say there.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a struggle, so it's taken me a little bit. But I like collapsing timeframes for people. What took me 13 years to learn, I'm trying to do it in less time for them. I've lost money in the stock market. I want to help people understand that there are opportunities outside the stock market. And my heart is with the working class. I was a fireman, and then seeing what the retirement systems are bankrupt, I don't want these guys to put in their whole life and then retire with nothing. And so I want to help educate people to where they can place money, not with me, with anybody, right? Because their goals might not be with me, right? If they want something, I'll refer them to one of my friends, so that's kind of what got me there. So I've only been doing it about 5 years, probably have around 5-6 million assets under management right now. We have the chocolate farm we're doing, which will probably be a 12 million, 18 million, assets under management. And what that is, if you want me to talk about it, I can. We have the largest chocolate farm in the country, and we have several crops, if you will. Majority of it is chocolate, but chocolate needs some shade. And so we planted some hardwood trees to give that shade. And so we also have areas that chocolate's not doing so good, and we stumbled upon somebody wanting lemongrass oil. So we're doing lemongrass. And then there's a fermenting process for chocolate or cacao, and you have to buy things for it. And instead of buying things, we're just planting those plants and using the plants like the banana leaf and things like that. So we have a lot of diversity as far as crops that will bring the investor money. And then we're selling the units of the farm. And so it is for accredited investors only. That's how I'm able to talk about it. It's a 506C. That's how I'm able to talk about it on the podcast. Just it's more generational wealth, right? You are getting some cash flow now, but majority of the cash flow is going to be when the hardwood trees are being harvested.
Well, and quick to touch back on your conversation about your investor list, understanding what does an investor want to do and how much time do they want to spend is really important. And so we deal with that ourselves on our team, active investor versus passive investor. There's a lot of people that are in a job and they really want to use their real estate investment as a way to get out of that job because they want to do the day-to-day handling of it. And so that's the beauty of, in our role, we're an agent working with investors. And at the same time, then we're working with passive investors to place their money into investments. And so it's that dynamic. Yeah. If somebody wants to actively manage a property themselves or work with a property manager, fantastic. That's one type of investor. But yeah, we're looking for, kind of that passive side is you're looking for people that they're busy professionals. They don't have the time to deal with figuring out what to do with the chocolate farm, right? And so you add value helping select good investments, but then also help manage that property and manage that asset on their behalf. And so for people in investing or working with investors, you can do both. You just need to understand that dynamic difference between an active investor, somebody that wants to have their hands on everything. They want to touch it. They want to talk about it. It makes up a part of their day. The passive investor is like, hey, when are the updates? And what's happening? They don't have as much of an impact in the strategy and the execution. You're putting that together. You're keeping them up to date, but yet you also have to earn their trust because if they want to invest their money with you, you have to do something well with it. And so that active versus passive investor dynamic is really important to understand.
Correct. And you have to talk to them differently too, so I talk to my active investors one way. I talk to my passive, in another way, and invite them to come along. If they're active and want to be passive in some areas, we invite them along. One of my mentors, his father wrote the book, Be in the Top 1%. And it's a book for real estate agents. Instead of selling a house to a person one every 5 years, do it like you guys and myself for investors. And he teaches you investor talk and things like that. And it just helps you to work with investors instead of just, mom and pop. I mean, you can help mom and pops too, right? But, putting investors' money to work where they're doing it in a grand scale to give people a place to sleep at night self-fulfilling. Robert Kiyosaki says, if you have one house, you're selfish. If you have multiple houses, you're doing good work, because you're providing heads and beds. So that's all, myself and you guys, what y'all are doing. We're just trying to help people and being good stewards of their money. And I think it's a noble business.
So I'm curious to learn, talking about this chocolate farm as an idea, how did that start of, hey, let's see. I think what we're going to do is we're going to raise some money here and we're going to put it into a chocolate farm. Thinking about Willy Wonka and the chocolate factory, I just picture you down in Belize opening up the gates and you've got your cane and your top hat and you're ready to go. So talk about kind of how that idea came to be, selecting the property, putting all that together. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah. So I'm, being a landscaper, I'm always interested in agriculture. And looking at the future, how many people is going to be in the world, like 9 billion in 25 years or so. We're going to have some problems if we don't start taking care of our environment. And since I love agriculture, I wanted to get into something and, really for myself. And I started out at citrus. But in Belize, we have that greening. We have probably one of the top quality juices in the country, in the world. Tropicana, all these people, love our juice, and our oranges aren't pretty orange, but they make them for juice and we sell it to all over the world. But we have a greening problem and that can affect the crop. So I didn't pick that. Then I went into sugar, but sugar is so political. And so I spent a lot of money, traveled Guatemala and everything just to buy some sugar for a commodities broker, and I couldn't get nowhere. So still haven't finished that one yet. But then who doesn't love chocolate? And I stumbled across a gentleman who lives not too far from me. I live between San Pedro and Ambergris Caye and Placencia. Both of them are on the coast. But I split my time between them, and he lives in Placencia and he owns a chocolate farm he was about to sell. And I'm like, David is his name as well. I'm like, Dave, why don't we help sell this farm for you? But instead of selling it to one person, let's split it up in chunks and invite investors to come along and take a piece of the profit. And by the way, you get more money for the farm and you get to retain management because you like managing the farm. And he had the management set up and everything. So the farm's running. We just sold our final part of the crop last week from last year. So what we do is since the shelf life is over a couple years, we don't sell everything at once. We wait till everybody else is out because then we get more money for it. But going back to the story, he wanted to know more about it. He wanted to know, who my team is. And we sat down with my mentor and we talked about that, and he decided to let's do it. And he didn't want nothing to do with splitting the farm up, and I didn't want nothing to do with managing the farm. So we make a great team. And so we just finished all the paperwork. We have soft reservations already. So I think next week we'll probably start, selling units to investors that want like some little bit of cash flow with some generational wealth. Come down and we'll take them a tour of the farm and show them how we make chocolate, and have a little bit of fun as well with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's such a cool story because, when people think about investing, is it single family, multi-families, flips? Is it office space, warehouse space, mixed use, or is it chocolate? And so that's the cool thing is, people get a good reason to have to come down to Belize, and check things out. And so, and that's the beauty too, is having somebody that knows how to manage and operate it. You already have that handled. And so you don't have to take on that learning curve. And it's just now you're educating your investors, and then once they put their money in, you're just giving them updates, telling them here's where we're at, we're on track with the plans, here's what the financial situation looks like, and helping them to manage that asset. And they don't want to have to learn how to manage and run a chocolate farm. That's the beauty of the partnership, right?
Right. Exactly. And I just do investor relations. Once a quarter, we'll go down there, with a drone and take video and show them, what we're harvesting, and show them being fermented and being bagged, and just give them the updates, and then whenever they want to come down, they can come down and take a look at their farm. They're part owner of a 515-acre chocolate farm in the country of Belize. And it's not just chocolate, like we said, we have multiple products. The lemongrass is doing great, and it harvests every 2 months. So whereas, cacao is once a year product, this will really drive up the investor return. So we'll be probably planting quite a few acres of the lemongrass, especially because it used to be a cattle farm. So a lot of the ground is compacted and the cacao is just not doing good. And since the root system on the lemongrass is so shallow, it's thriving there. So that whole area we'll probably do just in lemongrass.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So how does that work then? So for folks that are, looking to, whether it's a chocolate farm or whether it's, an apartment building, that process of raising money is unique. So kind of walk through that process for you of how you go about raising this capital.
Yeah. So once I find an investment I want to do, I'll use one as well. I won't say one as an example because I don't want to say anything, out of turn. But once you find a product you want to raise money for, let's say it's an apartment building. Mm-hmm. In Belize, it's a little different because there's no financing. Mm-hmm. And so you need to raise the funds for everything. If everything is syndicated, everything from your bookstore to a movie, your apartments that your listeners, buy or live in or whatever, houses can be syndicated. You just find that property, and that's what I do. I do the same thing. Then I hire my securities lawyer, and you want to find an exemption, and you don't want to, do a full-fledged, I think EXP, didn't they just go public, or they just rang the bell?
They just rang the bell. Yeah, they've been public.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
They were just invited to ring the bell. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you don't want to go full-fledged out because that takes millions of dollars and years. So you just pick the exemption. Usually it's a 506B or a 506C. And there's a difference, and we won't get into that now unless we have time. And then you just put the team together, put the deal together. And if the numbers make sense, if the numbers make sense, then you put the team and everything together. Mm-hmm. And then you just invite your investors to come along with you. But while you're doing that, you're talking to your investors, seeing what they want. What are their goals? What are their needs? Because this isn't what I'm doing. This is how I can help, for instance, you, Mike, achieve your goals and your dreams. If you want, because there's no financing, there's not going to be a ton of cash flow, so if you're looking for cash flow, I'm probably going to recommend you to invest in an apartment building in the US or in a carbon scrubber or ATMs. And I have friends that do that. So I can recommend them. But if you want to diversify, you want to be outside the US, have your kind of bolt hole or your plan B, as Simon Black talks, then I can help you. If you want to have some appreciation, you want a place where you can come and vacation, and then that's now tax deductible. I'm not an accountant, but check with your accountant, then you can do that, and so that's kind of what we're doing. So most people that are on my investor list are people that have come here, they bought here, or they're interested in possibly buying here, but they're getting their feet wet as a passive investor. And so that's kind of how it is.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the relationship piece that maybe people who haven't worked with investors that they don't understand is it's not like, hey, I'm just gonna, I'm investing in XYZ public traded company. I'm investing in a duplex in this other state, and then I'm investing in this chocolate farm. It's a relationship piece. They know you, they understand Belize. They understand, like, I want to work with David long term because he's done a great job for me. Or if they haven't worked with you yet, it's, hey, this David guy seems pretty good. He seems pretty honest, pretty trustworthy, and I'm interested to learn more about Belize. And so it's about relationships. I think that's the piece is, when we talk about working with investors, they just think, I've got this yellow pages book and I'm just going to pick this one guy because it seems to be decent. It's about building those long-term relationships. If you do a good job placing their money in one fund, now they're going to trust you to do that again and again and again. And you want to be able to essentially build that relationship as long as they want to. And so that's the key is it's not just I'm putting my money in this Belize chocolate farm one time. It's I think this David guy is pretty cool. And I think we're probably going to work together long-term in the future because I like what he's doing and I trust him.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely 100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's definitely a relationship business, and and being good stewards of their money. 100% agree.
Yeah. For the people that want to be good stewards. Yeah. There's people out there that don't, but you and me probably want to be good stewards of their money. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
well, my syndication lawyer says there's 3 ways you can do it. You can register the syndication, you can find an exemption, or it's illegal. Mm-hmm. And I definitely don't want to do that third one, because I don't want to go to jail. So, so we always do whatever we got to do, through the letter of the law. And when you come alongside us, or, when y'all are doing it, you'll meet the team, because I'm not doing it myself, right? I have a whole team behind me that I couldn't do nothing I do. But it also shows that if David can do it, anybody can do it. Just a guy from Charleston, South Carolina that, wasn't great in school, never went to college, but had a good work ethic and was honest. Anybody can do this business, and they can make good money at it if they're good stewards of other people's money.
Mm-hmm. And you get to do it from a beautiful place like Belize versus me looking outside my window and see we got more snow last night. So it's a great spot to be in. So cool. Well, yeah. So for people that want to learn more about you and more about your projects that you have going on, how can they do that?
Yeah. So we set up a special URL. And it's so it's REF, right? REF for real estate freedom at CaribbeanCapitalGroup.com. So REF at CaribbeanCapitalGroup.com. And any questions you have, if you want to come to Belize and my favorite drink's a mojito, I'll buy you a mojito or something else, and we'll just talk shop and see how I can help answer any of your questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing it. It's cool to be able to do something fun and different and unique. That's the cool thing about real estate and investing is there's lots of opportunities all over the place. So thanks for sharing about what you're working on, and encourage folks to reach out to you, and excited to see where this goes from here.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate it, buddy. And it was nice talking to you as well.